What's going on, everybody? It's Grade in 10, and let's call this Season 2. We had the summer off, now we're back into the fall. Things are getting busy, new projects, new frames. It's time to grade. Let's go. All right, guys, here is the shot we're going to tackle today. Now, the reason we're going to do this shot is because it's one that we've all had to deal with. It's the B-roll shot of the client and the service provider shaking hands in front of the windows. You run and gun, you don't have time to light the shot, you're using what's available, placing them where you can get the best angle possible with the best nat light. You're probably fighting a little bit of some incandescence or maybe fluorescence overhead. And of course, you got the sun outside just blowing through this window. So we're gonna take this shot to here, but I'm gonna show you where we started from. So right about that. Right, so this is murky. It's exposed okay. There's nothing blown out. You can see on the scopes that we're pretty healthy, and there's a lot of information here that we can work with. So I think this was a Sony a7 III. Let's assume it is. I'm pretty sure it is. So we're gonna jump in and we're gonna take it to here. So let's get started by deleting everything and building this from scratch. Skadoosh. All right, so we are working in YRGB color managed, so it's going to bring it from whatever raw codec it can detect to a Rec 709. I'm going to start by laying out some nodes. I'm going to go ahead and set up a couple of primaries. Oops, wrong node. I can't talk and do at the same time. That is my Achilles heel with this show. Working on it though. All right, so starting at the end, I'm going to label this guy sharp. We're going to go over here, grab this tab, drop down to about 0.47, maybe 0.46. Then I'm going to start back up here and I'm going to call it denoise. We're going to jump over here to the denoising tab. It's just got a little bit of that DSLR vibe in it, so I'm going to drop down here to small, crank this up to about 25. And I'm looking right here in the browns on this sofa or couch wall they've got. I'm going to dial up just a touch of the spatial threshold. I don't want to lose too much detail. I don't want to lose, like, you know, arm hair and you know, skin imperfections that make us look like humans, but I want to help it out a little bit. All right, next up, let's hit our next tab. I'm going to call this exposure, and we're going to play with the meat of the shot, which is right in here. I'm going to pull the highlight or the just the top end of this up until these highlights are maybe slightly clipping. I know it's just going to be little points where these window frames are coming down, so I don't really care. I'm just going to get it up there where I get kind of the meat of the shot. I want to get this stuff right here that's got some tree data. This looks like these trees right here. I want to get it up to where it's in the 90, 92, 93% range. Then I'm just going to bring my mids up. What I'm looking at is my talent while keeping an eye on not blowing out anything like that on the windows. So particularly right in here where you've got this glare that's creating a highlight. So I'm just going to play with that and get a balance of bringing them out without destroying my window. And I'm not going to go too far with it because I'm going to isolate the skin tone on each of these people, bring them out a little bit on their own, so it's going to help. So let's leave it there for now. Let's jump over to the primaries. I'm going to grab my offset wheel right here. I'm just going to roll this thing, watching my scopes, trying to even out some of my red and green at the top end on these trees, and looking at the skin tone, also looking at the what I'm going to call or perceive that should be white is like this area here of this windowsill. So I'm going to toggle this on and off, on. Yeah, I've pulled a nice chunk of green out, off and on. Yeah, that's looking better. But I don't want it to be too red or magenta, so I'm going to pull it a little more. And I'm using my wheels right now, but you can see it moving just barely down here, just barely moving. Okay, let's leave that there-ish for now. I say there-ish because I might come back and tweak it a little more. Next up, I'm going to call this adjustment. So this is where I'm going to grab my curves. I'm just going to rock a little bit of the fine details in the shadows and in the mids. I'm going to pull some red out of the lower chunk of this shot down here in the shadow. So all that did right there, if I disable it, you can see there's kind of a glowy redness, and really there's just a glow of red coming off her skin. I'm going to enable it, pop. You can see how it separates the shirt from her skin tone. Just that one little touch down here in the shadows helps also tame these couches from being like glowing reddish brown couches to just a more neutral brown. Now I'm going to come over here and tap green. I'm going to pull just a touch of green just right out of the middle of the shot in terms of shadows to highlights. Just a very slight amount. So if I toggle this off, on, it's very subtle, but it's happening. Okay, so what have I got going on with these two parallel setups here, you may be asking? Well, that's a great question. Let's talk about that. So I'm going to divide out the skin tone left, person on the left, skin tone person on the right, and then I'm going to divide out the trees and the glass reflection. And I like to break it out like this because I like to break it out like this. So how's that? For a reason. So let's call this skin L for left, and we'll call this skin R, or oops, I'm sorry, I totally hit the wrong button. Skin R for the person on the right. And then this one I will label trees, and I'm gonna call this other node here glass. So let's talk about skin tone on the left. Gonna grab our 3D qualifier. I'm gonna grab her right in there. Shift H to kind of solo it up. I'm not too worried about what's happening in these couches, and I'm not worried about what I'm grabbing on talent right, because these ladies just reach up and shake hands, and all I'm gonna do is mask off so that I'm isolating out most of, or I'm gonna isolate each of them to their own node. It's really hard to talk and do at the same time. I struggle so much with that on this show. It's like, that's a whole other skill level besides just grading, which is already hard enough. So, okay, let's open up our effects tab. Let's drop the color compressor on her and grab something that looks like the starting point with her skin tone, which is not that magenta. I want like a nicer, warmer brown. Let's see if we can find down here on her arm, maybe. Yeah, something like that. Now I'm going to crank up compression over here of the hue, and that's going to help pull some of those magentas out. You can see there's like some magenta here in the highlight. That's where we've got a combination of outdoor light and some kind of indoor light colliding. So I'm just going to compress it up pretty hard so it gets at least into the family of browns that we want to be in. Then I'm going to hit the saturation a little bit, not too much, but enough. Just, 20-30% here. Now I'm looking here on the vector scope. I want to make sure that I'm riding the skin line, and I am. I'm going to grab my offset wheel and just kind of pull it back over a touch. And I'm going to desaturate her just about 10%. Yep, maybe not that much, 5%. Okay, so then I'm going to just go ahead and mask her off. And where I'm going to hit the crossover point is going to be on the handshake, more or less. Favoring the head there a little bit. In fact, I might just do that. Let me just do this. I'm not going to create such a... There we go. We'll just do like that. That works. Okay, because they're just standing there. All right, now let me come back to my shot, and I'm going to lift. I'm still on this node with the skin isolated for the lady on the left. I'm going to grab all of my curves, and I'm just going to lift and bring her out a little bit more. Figure out, where do I want to bring her out? Can't hit it too low, starts to really wash her out. Hit too high, obviously gets really contrasty. Just got to feel this out. It can be tricky, for sure. Some people like to do this more with the wheels. I just like the curves. It's more like lifting a little bit of the low end off a kick drum and an EQ. That's my background. It's kind of where I resonate. Let's look back at our vector scope and Shift H to solo it, and she is right up on the skin line, looking really healthy right there. So let's come back off that. Let's jump to lady number 2. Just go ahead and mask her. And again, favoring the top portion of the frame, although I do have her arm coming off. Something like that should suffice. Now, grabbing our 3D qualifier, I'm just going to rock her arm because that's going to contain pretty much all the data I need. And then we're just going to clean it up over here by exploring the tools. A little bit of black clip to pull some of it off her hair. I don't mind a little bit on her hair, but I don't want her entire head of hair going with the skin. I want to break it off as much as I can. Okay, feeling pretty good about that. There's a lot of color variance you can see on the vector scope. Let's jump the compressor onto it and let's tighten up her skin tone. Something that feels natural and healthy, kind of this lovely lighter orangey tan peach. And we're going to squish down her hue and saturation just a little bit. Okay, now Shift H back to unsoloed view. Let's just kill these 2 nodes real quick and watch what happens to skin tone. So, hold on, there we go. So, killing these off, and then back on, off, on. So clearly, the lady on the left, we're doing a lot more. We're lifting her, we're making it feel like she's lit. I'm not even using the relight tool in Resolve right now. Just working with the shadows and isolating her skin tone, we get this nice presence here. We are getting a little bit of a bleed on this couch. I'm not going to worry about it right now because probably what I would do is mask it and track it. Again, we're just trying to get a workable grade to show a client in about 10 minutes. On this end, we're not doing a ton to her. Just showing it off and on, off, on, but it is happening. And again, Shift H, I can see that she is right on the skin tone line. I'm going to pull it up a little bit, push it a little bit. And I'm going to desat her just a touch. And then I'm also going to come in here on my curves. I'm going to grab the red. I'm going to pull a little more red out of the bottom end of her skin tone because she just is catching some reflection from off camera frame right. So now if I toggle this on and off, you can see how it just tightens her up. Okay, let's look at these trees. Actually, let's look at the glass first. Should have done the glass on top. I'm going to grab my qualifier again. I know it's like my favorite tool in the world. Sorry, love it. I'm going to grab where it's the most distracting, which is right here. I just want to grab the bluest of blue part if I can. Still try to get a decent swath of blue. This takes a little experimentation. So. Okay, that's not bad because there's going to be some blue out here in the trees because of the daylight difference, but excuse me, cough in your ear. Okay. Let's work on cleaning this up a little bit and see what we can do. I don't mind a little bit of blue, like I said, happening in the trees because there is some out there. I don't want to ignore it, but I want to lean toward trying to mainly get this huge blue stripe on that window gone. We're going to be very generous with blur and denoise. We don't want this to take precedence on the shot in terms of being too detailed and showing us too much motion in the trees blowing and that kind of thing. Okay, so decently highlighted there. What I'm going to do is just desaturate it right here. I'm going to drop it to about half. I'm going to Shift H. And now what we're looking at is a little bit cleaner image. Let's toggle it off and then back on. much less distracting without that blue. And I'm actually going to go in here and grab, right there is like a stripe of blue. There we go. Off, on. Okay, look at that. That's way better. Now, maybe we won't be quite that aggressive, and I might even come over here and play with kind of pulling that down a little bit. Yeah, that kind of helps to balance it out against what's happening outside. It makes it a little less visible. Didn't do this on the thumbnail, but I kind of like that. Okay, so toggling off, on, just auditioning it, pulling a lot out of there. You can see it's even getting some of that. Getting a little green, but I'm not too worried about that. We're going to come up here now. We're going to grab a whole lot of green, particularly where you care about it, where you notice it, which is right in there. Try not to grab too much where I know the blue is. Let's see if I can grab a little bit over there. Yeah, that's a pretty good sample of green. Enough to communicate the color of the trees. Okay, I'm going to clean it up just a little bit with some white clip. My mouse is glitching. It keeps letting go of tools today, I've noticed. Kind of frustrating. Okay. Let's come in here to our illustrious curves. Let's just pull some blues out of everything in those trees. Let's push some green into those trees. Find the right spot. Just want to give it a little extra zhuzh without looking artificial. And I'm going to bump up my saturation. Okay, so off, on. Very subtle, off, on. But it feels like it helps pulling some of that blue back out. Let's see if I can do that down here. All right, yeah, that's better. It's a little more dead here. So if I toggle both the trees and the glass off, on, this helps them feel more present and take some of this blue halo-y crud out of the shot for me. Actually, I'll pull that back a little more. Okay, let's move on to our effects. Okay, let's move on to the wall. I'm going to call this wall. So we have this pillar over here. It's got, again, just a mixed bag of color. I'm going to isolate this pretty generously, get it pretty locked in, and it's going to be grabbing a lot of stuff over here. I do want to pull her hair out of it if I can. I'm going to see if I can subtract that out. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. You know what? Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to mask. No, I'm not going to mask. Let me try this again. Okay. Actually, I will mask this off because it's not distracting me anywhere. It's not distracting me over here. Where it's distracting me is just on the left of frame, which I like it. It's part of the shot. We need it in the shot. I'm basically just going to come in, clean up my edges a little bit. And then I'm going to desat it about halfway. There we go. And I can also play with just making it pop a little more or pull it back a little bit. So I could just shadow it out a little bit, make it feel a little less prominent in the shot, also a little cleaner. So if I toggle off, then back on, off, on, it's kind of cleaning up this line right here, cleaning up this a little bit, pushes my eye more toward the ladies. Finally, let's explore throwing this next to last node in the lab color space. We'll call it lab. And then, as I've discussed in previous episodes, I'm just going to drop my shadows about 6.5. Oops, too cool. It cools off your shadows, but it does it in a really neat way. And then I'm going to push my highlights about 2, which is going to push some warmth into my highlights. And it does it with just such a unique feel. I don't even know how to describe it other than it seems like it just tightens up and enriches the shots a lot of times if you use it right and use it sparingly. Okay, last thing I want to do before sharpening and all these tree things, I'm going to do something I hadn't even thought of until just now. And I'm going to insert a node right here because I'm feeling zesty today. So we're going to do a blur. We're going to do a depth map on the windows to push them more out of focus, bring our talent out. Let's grab our depth map plugin, drop it on there, throw it on faster, throw it on invert, adjust. And what I want to do is bring my mirror limit just to where I've got just the ladies, and then that couch is even right in here. I don't want that in focus, so I want to pull that back where it's just a little gray. And then we're just going to let everything out there kind of disappear. Kill our preview. And on this node, after it, now that we're passing alpha through it, with the alpha node connection here, we're going to just throw the Gaussian on here. And it's way too much, of course, but out of the gate, it's too much. We're going to back it off a lot and then roll it in like that. So let's see if I kill that. Ooh, it's just subtle. It's subtle enough. But I love what it does. It softens up. It's even kind of softly riding around the slope of her hair here. But you can see if it's off and then if it's on, now it's just pulling my eye closer to them. I'm really appreciating it on this lady right here. And then I can always come back in here and tighten this up if I need to. I can adjust how far back or not I'm seeing this. Yeah, I like the way that's working. It's fun. This is one of those plugins you just have to tinker with a little bit. You don't want to do too much or it starts to feel like a bad tilt shift effect. But it is so zesty when you use it right. So let's, all right, let's see where we're at. Let me clean up the node graph here. We'll review what we've got. So this is our original, very green, very dark, very imbalanced. So if I disable everything, we're going to review one at a time. We're going to denoise. It cleans up all this noise right down in here in these dark browny sections here. We're going to adjust exposure overall. This is just getting us to where we're not clipping, but a little bit on these white rods from the windowsill. I don't really care. There's nothing I care about getting clipped. It just feels natural. Primary, rolling it a little bit toward magenta, blue, kind of in that realm. Adjustments, we're going to pull some green out of the middle very subtly and red out of the shadows very subtly across the whole image. Depth, we're going to make our talent pop in focus and in lighting. Okay, skin tone for our talent on the left. We just isolated her and we're going to bring her out with a combination of masking her away from the other lady, and then just lifting the shadows and then compressing her skin tone so that it rides our skin line and feels more uniform, which eliminates all that gicky skin tone color from the mixed lighting of the fluorescence or whatever. And then skin on the right, which I'm not doing as much to be honest, but you can see it's making a subtle difference. Trees, we're going to make them pop a little more green. And then our glass, we're going to desat and also kind of pull down in the shot so it's just not so bright. So it really helps set that ratio better between my talent and between the talent and the background. Finally, the wall, we're going to whiten out this wall and we're going to pull it back so it's a little less prominent. Using a lab color space, kaboom, on, off, on. Again, just a subtle tightening of the reds and the shadows across the whole image. And then finally sharpening it to really make our talent pop. This hair right here, her face really comes out. Loving the skin tone. They look unique, but they both look perfectly as they should. So I do believe we have colored this shot. So in a fairly quick amount of time, you've taken a B-roll shot that was super challenging, ratio of talent to background not correct, and we've brought it out and made it feel like a professionally lit and properly graded shot. And of course, then I could take it and add a layer on top of this and start doing some grade if I really wanted to give it a style or a vibe. But in this case, we're keeping it pure, client production. So it's just a pretty straight across the board color correction. And yeah, that's about it. All right. Thank you for following and for getting into season 2 with me. I had to say season 2 to force myself to actually start getting in the groove again. It's so easy to get lazy in the summertime, but we're back. So give us a follow, like, all that stuff. Subscribe below. Thanks. See you next time.